Today we're going to be talking about remote audits. What we've learned so far. Is it more efficient than going in person? And what your thoughts are on what the future is going to be like for audits?
Welcome to Joel of Biryani, and let's get into the topic right away.
Right. So, like I said initially, we're going to be talking about remote audits. What has been your
Yep,
experience? Based on my work history with you, I think
yep,
you're more of the going to the office to get work done.
yeah. So for me, when you talk about remote audits or any kind of like remote reviews
Yeah.
or whatever it might be, compilations, whatever you're doing, uh, it's not only going into your office. I would rather be saying you going to the client's office and doing the work,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
So for me, that has been how I started my career,
Okay.
and that is why I prefer that. There are a few reasons which I can run through real quick.
Okay.
First would be the one-on-one interaction with the client.
Yeah.
It's very good, especially for people who are in their staff level or the senior level, because it
Yeah.
gives them some experience of how to talk to the client, what to expect, and they're able to ask questions right away because usually managers visit more often. Yes, the partners will visit probably once in a while,
Yeah.
but it gives them that environment to be able to come out of their shell, if you may say. The second benefit, of course, is like I, as a manager, whenever I would go there and the team would be sitting, I can actually see someone's face and I know they're struggling. So now what has happened is people working remotely, sometimes I don't know someone is struggling until they reach out, and not everybody reaches out. That's the
Mm-hmm.
thing. A lot of people are a bit, I would say, introverted, or
Yeah.
they are not very open when it comes to communication. Like they want help, but they don't know how to approach it. They're always waiting for the manager's uh, Teams or Zoom, whatever status to go from red, busy to green, and then the
Yeah.
message, and that might be too late because some things need to be answered right away. That would be the second thing. So if I was there, I was able to help people. It would be easier. I could just go over and say what's happening and help it out. And thirdly, the client is available.
Yeah.
So the client dodging you and your emails, it's much more difficult for them to dodge you face to face. So you can actually just walk in there and say, hey, this is urgent. Let's get this one out. And the smaller things can be kept on email and tracking and stuff. But I think that was the main positives or the best things about not working remotely and being in person. What about you? What has your experience been, and what do you think?
I think yeah. I think you asking for my experience and what do I think is a good way to put it, and I would explain why. I think from an experience point of view, I think it depends on the situation.
Yeah,
It depends on the phase within the audit where the team is. That kind of determine how important if a remote or a face-to-face
yeah,
audit is. I think my preference as well is definitely remote, and you know
yeah,
why? Because I don't, I feel like I do more work when I'm working remotely. And not to sound selfish, that's probably because I'm not engineer stuff, which is something you mentioned. Because I think to your point, when you're just starting up, it's better to go in person
mhm,
because it's easier to get the help that you need. It's easier to establish that the work effort, the work
yeah.
ethics that you need, and you need to build that resistance. And then as you grow across the ranks, then you can maybe switch into more of an hybrid situation, right?
All right. Yeah,
When I did mention initially, when I mentioned that the phase of the audit, determines, what is more efficient and what's more effective
yeah,
for an audit. I think when you're trying to wrap up, there's really no point staying in a remote or trying to do it remotely. Go there in person. To your point, it's better even if you're in the office of the client,
yeah,
because that way, it's harder to dodge you in person than when you've been dodged on the emails.
yeah,
And you can easily get clarifications because
yep,
sometimes you get, things that being communicated via emails get misconstrued. So I do agree to you on your point of sometimes it's actually just better go in person to get the work done. And I
yeah,
think one of the most important things that you mentioned is as a manager, when you're there in person, you know, you can see people's face and know if you're struggling or not, and
yeah,
then you can actually just offer to help stuff someone waiting for. And we all do it, looking at your partner, looking at your manager, looking at your one of team leads, starters, and say, "Oh, he's on red, he's in green." If you're working with someone like me, I'm always on red.
yeah,
So definitely you would never reach out to me throughout the entire day.
Yeah,
But if we're there in person, you would know if I when
yeah,
I have the time. You can just
yeah.
ask a question.
Unless you're holding a red and green
You
board,
know what I'm
red,
saying? Which would
typing
be
with one
very
hand.
rare in the office
Yeah,
setting, right? But yeah, so I think that's it, but from a personal preference point of view. To be honest with you, I am more of a proponent for remote audits,
yeah,
and I think it's more because of the travel time to the office.
yeah.
Sometimes you just want to wake up, pick up your
That's what
laptop,
get
and
in.
get it work done on couch. But if we're talking in a practical settings,
Hmm.
I think more of an hybrid or a balance between going into the office and sometimes giving the team time to actually work from home. Sometimes kind of would provide a good balance,
Yeah,
and you would probably to help them feel more. Because flexibility helps people feel more seen, and it makes them feel like they have some sort of control over their time and the work that they have to
yeah.
churn out, right? So that's what I think.
Right. That's pretty good. Like from my perspective, like since I've spoken about the benefits
Yeah,
of what do you say, in-person audits, I will talk about the remote as well. I totally agree to you about the timing perspective.
yeah,
I think like you can just wake up, get ready, and get started, or
yeah,
just wash your face and start working.
yeah,
Uh, which is good. Like it saves you some travel time and stuff, especially if you live far away.
yeah.
I think remote audits also make more sense if the client is based in different country, or
I agree.
if they have the accounting team split between multiple locations.
Yeah.
Because I've had clients where they are big MNCs and they have 2 3 offices, and I don't think it's efficient to go to each office
Mm.
and have those meetings over there.
Except you have a private jet, but that's
Yeah,
that's a different.
that's the dream. That's the dream.
Exactly my point.
Then I would have my own audit firm, not like be working as a manager. But
Yeah,
anyway, that being said, I think that's the biggest thing in terms of time, in terms of location where they
hmm,
are. And I've always been the person who thinks like we always have this false sense of control. You never have control over everything.
yeah. You don't. No, you
You
don't.
don't.
You
You think
don't.
you have,
Yeah.
and that gives a false identity of control. But
Hmm.
still, if you feel like, hey, you think you have control, I think, yeah, why not? You mentioned something really important, the hybrid part of it. And I
Yeah.
think that is important, especially with the new age and time we are in. And everything kind of switched because of COVID.
Yeah.
People thought that audits could not be
Absolutely.
done remotely. You
Yeah.
have to be there in person. Yes, there were a few which were still happening remotely back in that day, but then people were sending documents either through mail or whatever, or it was happening, but it wasn't that much,
Yeah.
like probably a 5% or maybe 10% tops.
Yeah.
But now we have like 90 95% of those things. I do feel, before we get into the hybrid, this will be the last question of this video. I do feel, however, going in person also creates that connection with the client. Whenever I have personally been there with the client, I was able to have a much more better relationship with the client. And when I asked them certain questions that related to after meeting them in person, they were much more responsive and much more
Yeah.
uh, easier to approach. But when it was just a person over email, it just didn't feel the same.
Yeah.
So, and as I said, we have mentioned this in a previous video, as you move up the ladder, you technically become a salesperson. So if you don't have that connection, so to
It's kind of
keep that
hard. Yeah.
client will be difficult. That's why it is good to meet the client as much as possible.
Yeah.
Anyway, hybrid. So talk about what do you mean by hybrid, and what kind of things would you like to see firms moving towards for hybrid?
I think one key thing in hybrid is figuring out balance.
Yeah,
Figuring out what situations you want to mandate people to come in, because that is very important. And not just springing it on people, right?
yeah,
Letting them know, like let there be structure, because if there's a structure, they can plan around that. Uh, so what I think about hybrid is figuring out that there's nothing perfect, but
yeah.
that ideal balance, or maybe not ideal, but the moderate balance between when
I
you have
am
to come
I
in.
am very close to perfect. Just kidding. You can carry.
I mean, I can see why you would say that, but you understand what I mean.
Yeah,
So figuring out the balance between when you have to come in and then when you have to go into the office or go into a client site, because I think it's very important. I think one of the key things that makes going in person very important is establishing that personal connection with your client.
mhm,
Like I think it's
yeah,
very important because it helps you. It helps you grow your network. It helps you, your network. Sorry. It also helps you connect with the client. And I think once there is, and it helps you build trust
yeah,
between yourself and the client. And when there's a level of trust, it makes your work easier because to work as an auditor or an accountant is not it's not the easiest.
Yeah.
But if you can establish that relationship, it makes it easier. Even when people you're raising observations that people don't like, once you have that, when they're challenging you, the challenges come
Yeah.
from a place of respect, or come from a place of, oh, you get an email that's not even saying hi, just the response to your observations and just comment back and share your video, like, oh god,
Yeah.
what did I do to deserve this? But that personal relationship takes a bit of that piece
Yeah.
away. So back to your question, yes, I think figuring out that balance between coming in and going out. I think set up a structure, maybe let people know how many times you expect them to come
Yeah.
in, then give them the latitude to figure out when they don't want to come in, and just make sure that there's an open communication structure as well,
Right.
where people know where people are,
Yeah.
and you can use. That's why nowadays it's easier to do that because you have the help of technology. Kind of tell you, I know in my office you kind of have that functionality that kind of lets people know where you're working from on a
Right.
certain day. So then
Yeah.
if you're in the office, if you're at home, you don't want to walk up, so you can easily do that.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that I did learn, and it was both in public and out of public accounting, is whenever you are in the office, work towards scheduling your meetings, because you can then do physical meetings,
Yeah.
which is one of the very important, you know, reasons for the hybrid situation, so that you just don't feel taken away from your office and the environment that you're working with, but you can have that physical effect as well.
Very nice. So you can't do the Teams thing wherein you do.
Yeah.
This
Oh,
is this
yeah.
is the equivalent of
You
this is the
know?
equivalent of not turning your camera on in a Teams meeting.
Exactly.
So
Exactly.
in certain cases, like I do respect, in certain cases, people might not be able to do it because of
Yeah.
some personal situation, having kids in the
Yeah.
background, or maybe having some other things going on, and I understand. But if that's not the thing, that I think that's one probably thing which everybody should do. They should turn on their cameras as much as
As
possible
much
so
as
you
you
can
can.
see.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if it's not a hindrance to your personal life in
Yeah.
any way. Anyhow, what I think, there is one or two points which I want to throw in really quickly for
Sure.
hybrid would be, totally agree with everything you said over there. Has to
Mm-hmm.
be a balance for everything.
Yeah.
There has to be one more thing wherever you're working in a team, though. Like especially, I think I'm talking about an audit firm itself
Yeah.
or an accounting firm wherein you're working in a big team. I think it makes sense for the entire team to come in on the same day,
Yeah.
because it's usually then does not add any value if three people come in one day and the other part of the team comes in the other day
Yeah.
and they don't interact. uh, then you're still technically working remote.
Yeah.
That's what I feel.
Yeah.
Then it's not working together.
Then the whole essence of the hybrid.
Exactly. So you then might as well work from home if you're going to come in
Yeah.
at separate days.
I agree.
So yeah, and be a bit flexible if you can. Like I know every individual has their own setup, but if you're working in a bigger team, if 8 people can make it and you're the only one, unless you have something very, very
Important.
important and you cannot skip it, don't try to be that one person who's standing away from
Yeah.
the team and then later on have that issue of like, oh my god, I was not very involved and I was not being taken care of. Because you have to understand, if it's such a big team, the person managing you has to answer 9 people, and if you're the only one who are not in person over there, the 8 people over there will take preference,
Exactly.
because the manager or senior manager, whoever it is, has to take out special time for you to connect to you. So that's just one point I would like to add. Like everybody come in together as a team, work together, because at the end of the day, only work can be only done on a timely basis if you work
Yeah.
together.
That was very important because we've seen instances where people just, I mean, and sometimes it's not deliberate. It's just it happens.
Yeah.
But I think to your point, as much as you can, try as much as you can to come in when people that you work with are in the office, because that's the whole essence. Because yeah, the idea is team bonding.
Yeah.
Ensuring that you have that one team mentality, and then coming in when everyone does kind of helps build that as well.
Exactly. All right, sounds good.
Yeah.
And plan together, achieve the targets together. Thank you very much for watching this video again.
Yeah.
Just like always, please like, subscribe, share
And-
this video so it can reach to other people.
And make comments as well.
Yes, comments
very
as well.
important.
Comments so it reaches out to the people who
Yeah.
need this information.
Yeah.
And let us know if there are any other topics you want us to cover.
Yeah, and thank you to all people that have been watching. We really appreciate the views. As Gagan said, if you have any suggestions, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah, this is Jolo Biryani signing off for this time.
All right. Have a great one.